of the book of Bereshit, Genesis, bring us face to face with the death of Jacob, with the process of the memory and the blessings and the question of the legacy of Jacob, and the Haftarah deals with the legacy of David. So that's the obvious main connection, the two leaders at the end of their lives and how they leave their legacy with their successors. And let's start with Jacob on his deathbed. And go ahead, Saul, would you like to read?
Hi, okay. Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael Lamut, Vayikra, Livno leYosef Yomer Lo, Imna Matzati Chen Be'einecha, Simna Yadecha Tachat
Yadecha
Tachat Yerechi, ועשית עמדי חסד ואמת, אל נא תקברני במצרים. When the time came for Israel to die, he called his son Yosef and said to him, "If I have found favor in your eyes, please place your hand under my thigh and deal with me in kindness, and please do not bury me in Egypt."
Right. So Jacob is aware of him reaching the end of his life. Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael Lamut. You can see, that Israel is the other name for Jacob. Vayikra livno Yosef. Again, the succession of Yaakov, of Jacob, is interesting, and that is Yosef. And Vayikrevu Yemei so and so Lamut is an idiomatic way to talk about the deathbed of someone. Okay, so again, Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael Lamut. The subject of Vayikrevu, this katal, third person masculine plural, as you can see, the subject is Yemei Yisrael, the days of Israel. They approached. Okay, Lamut here is of dying. Okay, it's not that the days, okay, but the days in which Jacob would die came near, came close. Okay, so this is a temporal clause which idiomatically presents one's approaching death time. Okay, and you can see the various different uses of the lamed that we've talked about as a preposition in the past as well. So Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael Lamut. Here the lamed expresses the before the infinitive construct Lamut. The purpose of their approachment, if you will. Okay, so that's the lamed preposition before the infinitive construct, Lamut. Vayikra livno leYosef. He summoned. Vayikra le. Okay, the direct object of the verb Vayikra, or the indirect object, livno, and then we have a transition, leYosef. So his son, Joseph, both of them using the lamed as the indirect object, okay, where it could also be the direct object of the verb, because the verb Vayikra has various different meanings, okay? And here, since it does mean to summon rather than to call literally, the word to call, Vayikra, could be calling, reading, summoning. In the sense of summoning, he summoned Joseph. So contextually, it's a direct object, even though usually the lamed can express both the direct and the indirect, okay? And it can be that one reads something to someone, and then the indirect object of the verb kuf resh aleph could be marked by the lamed preposition. Here, since the meaning of the verb is to summon, the indirect lamed is actually a direct object. He summoned Joseph. He didn't read the book to Joseph. Vayikra, or the letter or the book, Vayikra et hamichtav leYosef, okay, or be'oznei Yosef, right? But he summoned his son Joseph. So the lamed preposition, which can be used as a direct or indirect, here is used as a direct object in the sense of summoning. Okay. Imna matzati chen be'enecha, okay, finding favor. Again, we're so used to biblical Hebrew in this English, guys, so we forget that this is an idiomatic way of saying, if you like me, if you're willing to do this this thing for me, okay, because it is always followed by a request. So it's while it is a katal verb, matzati, imna matzati chen be'enecha, it doesn't have to do with anything of the past, right? This has to do with the current situation. It is a way to say, if I am good in your eyes, okay? It's a stative katal. It's a stative use of the katal. It's not if I found favor in your eyes in the past, but if you find me favorable, if you like me as a state, as a stative relationship. So this is stative katal or stative perfect, even though the verb is katal. So the katal is not always past. Can you see that, guys?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Imna matzati chen be'enecha, followed always by a request. And again, simna is a request. The imperative form in Hebrew is a form that expresses the will of the speaker towards something. It's not always an imperative in the same sense of the word imperative in English that is close to the word command, okay? But rather expression of the volition of the speaker in various degrees. You can see that the particle of entreaty na is following sim, so usually it makes it a request. Imna matzati chen be'enecha simna yadecha tachat yerechi. Why would someone put the hand under the thigh? As kind of an oath, right? Taking an oath, right? Taking an oath. Some have connected it to the covenant, okay, that is made with God, okay. That covenant that is made with God is marked in the flesh under the thigh, okay. When Abram makes the covenant with God, God tells him, you have to circumcise. You have to put that covenant in the flesh under your thigh. Okay, and that is when he sends his servant, he also makes him take that kind of an oath. So there is a covenantal relationship or a covenantal context, possibly, to putting the hand under the thigh. So if we are already talking about a covenant, you can see that the chesed ve'emet has kind of a covenantal context. This is hendiadys, okay? Chesed ve'emet are nominal hendiadys. Do you remember the phrase hendiadys, guys? Okay, so quick Greek moment, hendiadys. Hen, one, okay? Like henotheism, believing in one God, okay? As opposed to monotheism, believing in one and only God, okay? So hen, dia, okay? Dia through, okay? Like diachronic, okay? Hendiadys, 1 through 2. 1 through 2 means one phrase expressed by two words, chesed ve'emet, translated as kindness and truth here. But it's two nouns in this case, two words generally, joined together, usually by a conjunction, vav conjunction usually, and express a concept, one idea, okay? True faithfulness, if you will, or unfailing loyalty, or truthful loving kindness, chesed ve'emet. By the way, we have it in English. And another point to be made about hendiadys is that it oftentimes goes with alliterative qualities. So think about English, Keen and Keith. Okay, we want to talk about the people who love us. So family and friends, Keen and Keith. Okay, and there are many examples in biblical Hebrew, and again, both for the idea of hendiadys and hendiadys having alliterative qualities. And a last point that I want to make about this, al na tikbereni b'mitzrayim. We had simna, imna, alna. So the particle of entreaty we've talked about. Imna, simna, alna, and alna tikbereni b'mitzrayim. Please do not bury me in Egypt. Why is it so bad to be buried in Egypt? Okay, so first of all, alna tikbereni, a little bit about the verb tikbereni. We have the root kuf, bet, and resh. You can see tav at the beginning, okay? Second person masculine singular or third person feminine singular. In this case, second person masculine singular, as Jacob is speaking to Joseph. And the ni at the end is the object suffix of the first person common singular. Don't bury me. We have the kal. The binyan is kal, and this is a yiktol verb, as we said. The bet has a dagesh, but this is a weak dagesh. There is no vowel before it. Okay, it's a weak dagesh. So it's not a dagesh that would tell us this is a piel or something like that. Okay, if it were to be a piel, it would have had different vowel pointing. Tekabereni it would have been. But this is tikbereni, prefixed with al-na. This is a prohibitive jussive form, which is the negative of the imperative. So in Hebrew, we don't have a negative imperative. Stands to reason, okay? But rather we have a prohibitive jussive, and it affects the form. We don't have al-sim. We don't use the al and then the imperative form, but rather the al and then the jussive form. Okay, so al na tikbereni b'mitzrayim. That's as far as the grammar goes. How about the theology behind it? Why would he choose not to be buried in Egypt?
Not the promised land.
So not the promised land. That's definitely something there. Okay, but think about uh more
He
more
actually bought a
deeply.
piece of land.
Come again?
He had actually bought a piece of land, Shechem, hadn't he?
Right. So he buys Shechem, but he is not buried in Shechem.
No,
Joseph is buried in Shechem. He is buried in Hebron, right? In the cave
no.
of Machpelah.
Mhm.
Okay, guys, the geography and the theology is closely connected in the biblical world. Okay, the God is a God of the land. Okay, it's not that there is the reality, the biblical reality is more complex than that. But when David is talking about him being driven out, he's saying they have driven me out, saying to me, "Go worship foreign gods," because in uh, the law of the land is related to the God of the land, is related to the land itself. It doesn't mean that you cannot be somewhere else and be faithful to God. Moses is doing it, Aaron is doing it, the tribe to an extent, but there is a close connection between the geography and the theology. Yes, Anne.
That would be the same reason why Jonah tried to run away, right?
So this is part of the big discussion that we had in regards to why Jonah, or what the story of Jonah, generally speaking, and the universality of the story of Jonah, going against those ideas of, okay, you're not in Israel, you don't have to do what God tells you to do. And part of the story of Jonah, of God sending his prophet to a foreign nation in a foreign country to tell them to repent, is part of a very different voice in the Bible that talks about the universality of the God of the Bible, no doubt. But I'm saying that there is also a very strong voice uh, of local and uh, geographical presence of God in a certain place. By the way, it's not a concept that we don't know from politics. Okay, think about it. I'll take America. Many people here are from America or are familiar with America. So you have your local statutes, you have state law, and state law has, if you has certain jurisdiction, if you do something that is like small misdemeanor and you cross state line, you cannot be prosecuted for that. But if you do something bigger, then yes, you can, federal. And if you do something, let's say, for instance, if the International Court of Criminal Court decides to press charges against an American citizen or an American representative, and they put him in jail somewhere, America has a law that they can go to anywhere and bring them back. So in a sense, there is kind of a different application of the law, the American law in that case, or the authority of America in different places in the world to different extents. Okay, so I'm not saying it's the same, but I'm just expressing the will of Jacob to be buried in Israel as a will to be buried in the land that is closer to his heritage, but also to God. Okay, and his forefathers, as he says. Okay, now succession. So we've talked about Joseph as a succession, and Jacob is adopting, okay, spiritually adopting the children of Joseph. Think about those children. They did not grow up with their grandfather, with his heritage. They grew up in a house of an Egyptian viceroy, okay? and maybe they're not connected to that line. So Jacob is saying, yes, I'm adopting them. Jacob is also giving Joseph basically 2 parts of whatever will be given to the tribes, thus choosing him as the firstborn in a sense. So we have kind of a legal adoption formula here, and thus treating Joseph as the firstborn, getting a double portion. If each and every one of the other tribes would get a plot of land, or would get a part of the land to be, then both Ephraim and Manasseh will get a land, which would mark Joseph as the chosen firstborn. Radical move, continuing the tradition of the book of Genesis, to choose someone who is not the firstborn, but rather of the younger, okay, as he is ethically or for other reasons preferred as a successor, thus overriding the hierarchy of tribal law, so to speak. Okay, let's see this verse. Anne, would you like to read?
Yes, I would. ואתה שני בניך הנולדים לך בארץ מצרים, את בואי אליך מצרימה לי הם. אפרים ומנשה, כרובן ושמעון, כרובן ושמעון יהיו לי. Now your 2 sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt shall be mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, no less than Reuben and Shimeon.
Right. Very interesting things here, both like in the basic grammatical sense and in a more advanced things to notice as far as the language here. We'll talk about 1 or 2, and let's see the going back. Okay, well, we cannot cover everything, but I tried to kind of refresh our memory in regards to some main grammatical issues and some things that I'm not sure that we've talked about in the past. So, as far as the hanoladim, so you can see the definite article before this nifal, the nun of the nifal participle. Those who are born, hanoladim. Also, the reason I'm mentioning it is because you can see the vav, the original vav of this root resurfacing. You know that in biblical Hebrew, he gave birth, yalad, or he bore. As last I checked, men do not give birth, but in biblical Hebrew, they do father in the same with the same verb, and we've mentioned it in the past. But the original first root letter of this root was a vav originally. And you can see that by comparison to other Semitic languages. For instance, you might be familiar with the Arabic walad, okay? Which is a child in Arabic, okay? But in Hebrew and the Northwest Semitic languages in general, not just Hebrew, also Aramaic and Phoenician and other, we can see that those initial vav turned into yods. However, if we look closely, certain under certain phonetic circumstances, they kind of resurface. And here we can see that resurfacing of that original first root letter is a vav, hanoladim. So if I ask you, what is the root of hanoladim? The root is yod lamed and dalet, but you know that historically, at a certain point, it was a vav. So that's hanoladim. What else? Maybe some things that we have not talked about in the past. So ve'ata, do you see the verse starting with the word ve'ata? Guys, the word ve'ata?
Yeah,
Yes.
and now.
Yeah, translated now. What do you... They don't know that they're talking now? What is this? What is the purpose of ve'ata? Just to tell him up until now what? Now what?
At the end of my life.
But he says ve'ata. What is it? You're right. They will become successors at the end of life and so forth. But what is the idea of ve'ata? So ve'ata, and we find it also in epigraphic findings, in letters and so forth. What we have in when we see ve'ata, oftentimes we see kind of a court ruling, if you will, kind of a logical marker of transition into a significant part, a statement, down to earth, bottom line, okay, a verdict, okay. Think about a judge hearing both sides and kind of getting to the part of the decision. I'm not saying it's always a legal decision, okay, but it's an important statement, an important bottom line of something.
Will.
Okay?
Last will and testament.
Yeah, in this case, it is related to will and testament, but generally speaking, you can see that in speeches, in prophecies, and so forth, you've got this ve'ata. Also found, as I said, in epigraphic findings, in letters, this, that, blessings, ideas. Now, do this and that and that. Ve'ata, bottom line. Okay?
In
the
conclusion, yes.
Come
in
again?
conclusion.
Conclusion.
In conclusion, like the closing it.
Yeah, conclusion and bottom line, oftentimes in a practical sense. Okay? So, ve'ata, שני בניך נולדים לך בארץ מצרים, עד בואי אליך מצרימה לי הם. מצרימה, directive, hey, at the end of the word, instead of the, or earlier probably than the lamed preposition at the beginning, or the preposition el. We can find different ways of marking the direction in biblical Hebrew. This is a directive suffix, indicating the motion towards Egypt. Ephraim Manasseh, Reuven v'Shimon yihiu li. So li, we've talked about the lamed preposition. Li, hem, yihiu li. They are mine. They become mine. They are mine. This is kind of an adoption. And you can see the prepositional comparison by using the kaf preposition. Ki Reuven v'Shimon. So Ephraim and Manasseh are compared by the kaf preposition to Reuven v'Shimon. Okay, same status. In this case, both are regarded as children of Jacob. Okay, now we see the crossing of the hands, also very famous from the weekly portion from the end of the days of Jacob, when he is blessing these two grandchildren, Ephraim and Manasseh. Let's read this. Go ahead, guys.
Want me to read?
You'll take the next one. Jackie had her hand up. Rosalind, the next one, please. Yeah, so Jackie, go ahead.
Vayishlach Yisrael et Yamino vayashet al Rosh Ephraim vehu hatzair ve'et simolo al Rosh Manasseh. Sechel et Sekel et Yadav ki Manasseh Habkor. But Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, though he was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, thus crossing his hands, although Manasseh was the firstborn.
Right. Again, playing that concept of overriding the tribal rule, overriding the birth order rule, that the first one would be chosen as the successor, as the bigger one, okay? By sending his right hand, Vayishlach Yisrael et Yemino. Again, different idiomatic language than English. In English, you don't send your hand. You can stretch out your right hand. You can reach with your right hand. You don't send your hand. But in Hebrew, you do send your hand. Okay, so to speak, you use the same verb, shin, lamed, and chet. Here, vayishlach, third person masculine singular, kal, vayiktol, of the root shin, lamed, chet, to applying to one's hand, right hand. You can see also elliptically his right, Yamin is right. It's also south. And it simply, in an elliptical way, means right hand. The same goes for semolo, left one, right one. Okay, the word hand is implied when we see yemino and semolo. Okay, so that's with both of them with the third person masculine singular pronominal suffix, his right hand, his left hand, and both of them without the word hand, just right one, left one, obviously meaning his right hand, his left hand. Vayashet al rosh Ephraim, again, vayiktol, vayiktol. And here we have kind of a casus pendens. We have vehu hatzair. This is going back to Ephraim. Okay, so even though he is the young one, okay, so the phrase vehu hatzair is going back to Ephraim and starting in the middle, right? Based on the information, adding information that pertains to Ephraim, even if in the very unusual order, okay? Ve'et semolo al rosh Menashe, sikel. Here we have a PL verb, not a very common verb, but a PL verb nonetheless, to juxtapose, to reverse, okay? So, sikel et yadav ki Menashe habechor. So we have a causal clause starting with the word ki. The word ki is used for various purposes, okay? In this case, it explains why this would be reversal of the hand, okay? Providing the reason that the crossing of the hand is important. Ki Menashe Bechor, and even though Menashe is the firstborn, Joseph or Jacob decides to juxtapose his hands and to choose the younger over the older, overriding that basic rule. Again, why? Very interesting, but it continues that tradition of the book of Genesis, choosing the younger over the older. Why Jacob and Esau themselves, Isaac and Ishmael, big discussion, different alternatives were suggested, maybe because the ethos of the people of Israel themselves is not an ethos of an older nation, but of a younger nation. Okay. End of times, Jacob on his deathbed, and he is blessing or talking. Not everybody's getting a blessing there. We're not going to read the whole thing, but this is how he is gathering them and letting them know he's going to start blessing them. Rosalind, you wanted to read, please.
Okay. Vayikra Yaakov el Badav, Vayomer ha'asfu ve'agida lachem, et asher yikra etchem ve'acharim hayamim. Hikavtzu v'shimu b'nei Yaakov v'shimu el Yisrael Avichem. And Jacob called his sons and said, "Come together that I may tell you what is to befall you in days to come. Assemble and hearken, O sons of Jacob. Hearken to Israel your father."
Right. So we have two nice examples of kind of a reflexive of the Nifal. Okay, so we have He'asefu, gather yourself, hence Nifal being here reflexive or reciprocal, gather yourselves, gather each other. Okay, and Hikavetsu, which also has this notion of assemble yourself. Okay, both of these are Nifal imperatives, saying gather yourself. Okay, that I may tell you, ve'agida lachem et asher yikra etchem be'acharit hayamim. So you can see the object. Okay, the object here of ve'agida is expanded by this relative clause, serving as an opening for an object. I will tell you the time. No, I will tell you this and that and the other. So it's bigger than one or two words. Usually it will be put into a relative clause, serving as the direct object of the verb. And let me tell you, prefixed by the definite direct object marker et, and then opening a relative clause, asher yikra etchem be'acharit hayamim. Okay, so gather. So I will tell you what's going to happen in the end of days, and now starts a poem, if you will, or an utterness or a speech, and they are built according to the standards of biblical poetry. Okay, so how is standard biblical Hebrew written? It is written according to parallelism. That's one of the most celebrated key features of biblical poetry. Okay. Note the example here. Nice, balanced division into two parts, related to one another. Okay. Short sentences. Hikavetzu veshim'u bnei Yaakov veshim'u el Yisrael avichem. Okay, so hikavetzu veshim'u, obviously, gather and listen. Listen, O son of Jacob. Again, we have bnei Yaakov here is the vocative, him addressing them, summoning them to this deathbed, almost royal assembly. Okay. Veshim'u el Yisrael avichem. The Midrash, you know, these late Second Temple and post Second Temple collection of expanding and expounding on biblical text, tell us the story of the children gathering around Jacob, and Jacob is he wants to tell them what's going to happen at the end of days, right? So Jacob is saying he wants to tell them, but he doesn't tell them. Okay, at the end of the day, he doesn't tell them. And the Midrash is telling us that Jacob wanted to tell them, but he couldn't. God took it away from him, the ability to tell them what's going to happen in the future. So Jacob was worried. Maybe my sons are unworthy of knowing what's going to happen at the end of days. So he asked them, you know, is there anyone here that is not one with God? And the Midrash is telling us that the answer of the 12 tribes or the children gathered around the deathbed of Jacob is Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The children of Israel, okay, are addressing their father, telling him, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one." Obviously, a verse from Deuteronomy that has a different context, but the rabbis have taken that verse and incorporated into the story about the deathbed of Jacob and how his children are letting him know that they are one with God. Hear, O Israel. Israel is the name of Jacob, right? The Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Not referring to the people of Israel as it is in the original context in the book of Deuteronomy, but rather referring to Jacob, the person whose name is also Israel, letting him know that all his children are one with God. They are one and they have only one and only God. Okay, so that's a bit about that context, and you can see that Shim'u is used here a lot. Okay, Shim'u b'nei Yaakov, Shim'u el Yisrael avichem, and they answer, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Oh, what? Okay, someone wanted, okay. Why did I share? I don't know. Okay, moving on to the, okay. Remember that we've talked about the transition of Judah last week, and I want to talk also about the transition of Joseph, because Joseph could have he could have taken revenge of his brothers, and even if not, he could have said, you know what, I'm not taking revenge, but I'm certainly not going to let it slide. Okay, but Joseph is doing something very different. He's letting them know that they are not behind it, thus letting them feel better about themselves. Okay, let's see this verse. Go ahead, guys. Georgie, would you like to read?
Yeah. Wa'atem hashatem ala ra'ah Elohim hashava la tova lama'an ase
Aso,
asi
aso,
aso aso ka hatse laha chod rav. Besides, although you intended to harm, God intended for good, so as to bring about the present result, the survival of many people.
Okay. Right. So we have kind of a scale of justice, or what you thought and what God thought in this verse. Va'atem chashavtem alai ra'ah. Elohim chashava letova. So we have a contrast between what you planned, what you contemplated, and what God did. So you planned, you meant bad thing, but God, actually, you were part of God's plan to do something good. So you think you did bad and you're stressed about how I am going to respond, how I'm going to pay you back, but God has actually planned it for good. Lema'an, opening a purpose clause. Okay, the word lema'an, in order to do so and so, presenting this purpose clause. Aso kayom hazeh lehachayot am rav. Doing, aso is the infinitive construct, or an unusual form of the infinitive construct, I should say, but an infinitive construct nonetheless. For, in order to, for doing, kayom hazeh, at this day. Okay, the word zeh is the proximal demonstrative. This, kayom, as the day. Okay, so as this day, if you will, as is the current situation in this day. Lehachayot am rav, to sustain, to keep alive. Again, we have the infinitive construct here in the he field, to make a great nation, many people alive, to keep them alive. Okay, so Joseph is not just not taking revenge, but is also explaining to his brothers that they are all part of that plan of God. So that's a little bit about the death of Jacob. I do have another one about the death of Joseph, and again, his request to not be buried in Egypt, but rather to have his bones brought up. You know what? I'll read this to kind of save on time, and then we read from Joseph. So, guys, I hope you're gonna manage my reading. I hope I'm not gonna make too many mistakes. Okay, but if I do, please, jump. Okay. Vayomer Yosef el Echav, Anochi met. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die. But you see, the word met is I'm dead. Okay, this is again stated in kind of a near future. I'm about to die. Okay, I'm not dead yet, but I'm about to die. Velohim, note the aleph has no vowel pointing, hence silent. So I read it velohim. Velohim, pakod yifkod etchem. He shall certainly visit you, take notice of you, pay attention to you. Pakod yifkod, tautological infinitive, etchem. Ve'he'ela etchem min haaretz hazot. And he shall bring you up from this land. El haaretz asher nishba le'Avraham, le'Yitzchak, u'le'Yaakov. To the land Again, opening a relative clause, describing the land. Okay, which land? Asher nishba leAvraham leYitzchak uLyaakov, which he had sworn to Abram, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Okay, in normal English, to Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, or with Oxford comma, without Oxford comma. But in Hebrew, you can have the repetition of the preposition. Very common. Not the only way. There are various ways to play with a preposition, but here repeated 3 times for each and every one of the elements of this sequence. To Abram, to Isaac, to Jacob. Rather different than English. How do you translate it? It really depends on your policy. If you want to keep the this in English, you may. But if you want to say to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I wouldn't say it's a bad translation. It's a translation that is more idiomatic in English. Okay?
Yeah.
I cannot say that there is great significance in the repetition of the preposition, which I would say if it were to be an English text, I would say, listen, someone did something out of the ordinary here to keep the preposition before each and every element. Maybe he's not a native English speaker. Maybe he wanted to stress out something, but I would take notice of it in English. In Hebrew, I wouldn't. Okay? That's kind of what I want to show you when you read the Hebrew and you're translating the text to yourself. Make sure to kind of distinguish what is idiomatic to Hebrew and what is not. Okay? And when you want to say, okay, the author wanted to tell me something important, you have to say, okay, he diverged from the idiomatic way of saying things in Hebrew, not in English. Okay. Vayashba Yosef et bnei Yisrael lemor, and Joseph made the children of Israel take an oath, saying, Pakod yifkod Elohim etchem, va'alitem et atzmotai mizeh. Okay. Again, God should surely take notice of you and bring my bones from here. Note the word zeh. We had it earlier today. That's the close demonstrative. This, it may mark a place, it may mark a time. Okay. Now I want to deal with a Haftarah, and I want to get also to Yad Avshalom in Jerusalem. We're going to visit Jerusalem today. I'm sure you're all excited. Yeah, but you have the kotel behind me always, so it's, yeah. You don't believe how expensive it is to keep the light on in the middle of the night with a kotel. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's see these verses. Don, would you like to read a little bit?
Let's give it a try.
You'll read the first one? Go ahead. Vayikrevu
Yameh David Lamut Yasev et Shalomo
Vaitzav et Shelomo veno.
Okay, Le'amor.
Lemor.
Yeah.
Right. So again, we've seen that formula. We've seen it. That's the third time today we see it. We didn't see it with Joseph, but Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael lamut. Right. We had it earlier today. Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael lamut. Now Vayikrevu Yemei David lamut. So you can see the connection between the Parashat and the Haftarah, Genesis 47:29, and 1 Kings 2:1. Vayikrevu Yemei David lamut. ויצב את שלמה בנו לאמור. Okay. Again, we've talked about the Vayikrevu as the subject of Yemei Israel, and now Yemei David. We've talked about Lamut as and how, generally speaking, it functions as a temporal clause. The time of David to die approached. Vaitzav et Shlomo v'no lemor. He commanded. Here, to command has a general sense of last will and testament. Okay, of expressing the will of a dying man on a deathbed. Let's see the next verse. Gary, would you like to take the next one?
Yeah. Anochi cholech bederech kol haaretz vehazakta vehayita veish. I am going the way of all the earth. You will be the man in charge.
Right. So you'll be the man in charge. V'chazakta v'hayita leish. Very interesting. There is no explicit source telling us the age of Solomon at the time of David's passing. But every Jewish man knows when you become a man. Everybody knows. When do you become a man?
13 years of age.
Right. You have a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
So many of the commentators said, based on this verse, that Solomon was not yet bar mitzvah on the deathbed of David. Okay, so around his bar mitzvah time. Okay, so this is something that is mentioned here. Lynn, would you like to read the last verse?
Sure. So all the way to the very end to Sham?
Yeah, why not? You know what
Okay.
a kid bag question is, right?
I'm sorry?
I think I've talked about it in the past. Do you know what a kit bag question is?
No.
Okay, so a kit bag question is an Israeli term. It became kind of generalized. You can look it up in English. You'll find it in English modern dictionaries. But it really derives from modern Hebrew. The story goes like this. The drill sergeant said to the platoon of soldiers in the boot camp that they have to run around the base 7 times. And one of the soldiers asked, should we take the kid bag as well? So the sergeant said, you know what? Yes, with a kid bag. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if you ask a question that ends up with you doing more,
Yes,
that's a kid bag question.
I see. Next time I'll know.
Now you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ve'shamarta et mishmeret Adonai Elohecha la lechet bid rakav lishmor hukotav mitzotav umishpatav ve'edotai katuv ve'torat Moshe lema'an tashokil et kol
Taskil.
sorry?
Taskil.
Oh, taskil et kol asher ta'aseh ve'et kol asher tifnei sham.
Right. So we'll go back to the Hebrew in a second. But before we do that, let's see this part of very important Wikipedia entry. This is the Wikipedia. Oh, can you see this? Oh, now. Can you see this?
Okay.
The Wikipedia
Okay.
entry for kit bag question. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the kit bag question. Okay, so you read very nicely, and what I want you to notice, guys, in these verses, first of all, read the Haftarah, read this chapter. It is very interesting. It's a little bit like a Godfather kind of succession or deathbed wish, when David is letting Solomon to finish the job on certain things that he couldn't. Okay, a yes, Anne?
In German, you have an expression to buy the cat in the bag.
Okay, but is it like?
Yeah, it's like, well, it could go either way, but in any way,
Right.
you say yes to something you don't really know what it's about.
Right. This phrase exists in other languages. It's also adopted in Hebrew. Liknot chatul basak. Yeah, but it's not directly related to doing more because of your own question.
That's true. Yeah.
That's the point that I was making. I want to show you a vekatal verb that we have here. Vechazakta, vehayita, veshamarta. Okay, all of these are vekatal, used in more of a volitive sense. You should be strong. You should become a man. In my opinion, you can see here the translation is a bit different. You will be the man in charge. And now, is he wrong? I think he's not fully accurate. Is he wrong? No, he has a different opinion than mine. As far as the use of these verbs, you can see the verbs vechazakta and vehayita. Both of these are vekatal verbs. Second person masculine singular vekatal. Okay, they're kal verbs. Okay, vekatal. Okay, vechazakta vehayita liish. I think this has a volitional context. So I would translate this more along the line of an imperative. Okay? Or having some kind of an imperative force. A command in the future. So you shall be strong and you shall be a man. Is he wrong? It's a matter of nuance. I would have translated it differently. I think that it's not the best possible translation. You will be the man in charge, okay? But rather, I want you to become the man in charge. Okay? Based on Veshamarta. He's not telling him, you will be the one keeping, but rather keep. Okay? Are you with me, guys? Very good. Thus, we have seen the Parashat and the Haftarah and the connection between them. Read more about the Haftarah. It does have surprises, not everything you would have expected from kind of a righteous, but David was a king, you know, so part of being a king has to do with dealing with stuff that is not always the vegan, let's say. Okay. No, it's true, guys. I'm saying there is a bit of a difference between Jews in Israel and Jews outside of Israel in that sense, who grew up in outside of Israel, because Jews in outside of Israel, I'm saying England, France, America, oftentimes they have the privilege of not, at least in times of general peace, that like we had in the last generation or in the generation following the Second World War, they oftentimes they don't have to get their hands dirty because they say we do our profession again, doctor, lawyer, whichever profession they have, screenwriter, okay? They don't have to be the police, they don't have to be the Secret Service, they don't have to be the CIA, the FBI, the MI5, the MI6. I'm not saying there are no Jews there. I'm saying it's not mostly Jews. And so they oftentimes are privileged with not having to do these things. Like David tells Solomon, find a way to get rid of that person. Okay, find a way to settle the score with that person. Okay, these are things that you sometimes have to do as a government. You have to find a ways, following the Munich massacre of the athletes. When the Mossad decided we're gonna get even with each and every one of those guys. Did it get messy at times? Yes. Okay, same goes for the now after October 7th. The Shabak started